We go. Recording in progress. Happy Friday, happy end of May, happy kickoff of summer, wherever you may be in all the things. Welcome to MVP Office Hours. I am Dale Ziegler. Along with me, my usual partners in crime, Squire Kirshner and Joy Shutters Helbing. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Fun fact, today is May 27th. In the upper right, you can follow any of us at our Twitter handles there, as well as the MVP Office Hours handle. You can catch registration information at our site, mvpofficehours.info. We do have an email address, but you will probably get an out-of-office reply that says, hey, go to the success community because, sharing is caring and power to the people. Let's put your question out to the whole group, not just the three of us who monitor this email box. So here is the link to the MVP Office Hours US group. But if you need to ask us a question privately, you can still email us there. Welcome again. Normally we do this on the first and third Friday of the month, but we're in kind of a wonky stretch here that we did not have the call last Friday because of the admin release readiness call from Salesforce. And June is a 5-Friday month, so that was going to throw us off anyway. So let's do this today and then go 2 weeks, and we'll be back on track, and the 4th of July holiday as well, all that good stuff. So trust us, there was a plan and some deliberateness to this, but normally first and third Friday, although this says June 3rd, that is next Friday.
Yeah, but if we want to go 2 and 2, like you said, that's fine by me. It works out better actually. So
we haven't published anything yet. What do you want to do?
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
We might meet with you guys next week. We might not.
Yeah. Maybe, whatever. The registration link is always live. So if it says June 3rd, it says June 3rd. If it says June 10th, it says June 10th. I don't know. We'll see. But this is our static registration link. And then you can also catch past recordings within the community on Twitter and on the YouTubes. If you're going to post anywhere, just please use our favorite hashtags. If this is your first time here, welcome. Welcome to all current and future MVPs, because y'all are MVPs, every single one of you. We just ask everyone to participate, share your insights, any recommendations you may have, answer the questions. Feel free to ask questions, whatever. There's nothing that says the MVPs have to answer it. Sometimes MVPs ask. It's open for everyone. And if you just sit on mute the whole time, that's fine too, because it's a great way to listen and learn and kind of get acclimated and pick up some things. Everyone is welcome, no matter what level of engagement and participation you throw in there. Feel free to share links and any other resources in the Zoom chat. We will pick those up. We have them open on our other screens and actively monitoring. If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand using Zoom reactions. I think we're all probably familiar with those by now. Or if it's dead air, then just speak up, unmute. Just ask that you announce yourself. You can share your screen, but please do not share production or any other private information. Show us sandboxes, show us dev orgs. We are recording this, and we just don't want to have we don't want to have any of your company's information or your client's information on the internet's recorded for forever. So that's all. Community events, really happy to see that those are coming back in person, less and less virtual, more and more in person. London's Calling in a couple of weeks. You're Dreaming in the Benelux region a week after that. Southeast Dreaming same weekend down in Atlanta. Dreaming in Color, I am not familiar with that one yet, in Raleigh at the end of June. And then of course Salesforce events, Connections and World Tour, Chicago and London respectively. Excuse me. Feel free to follow any of these groups. They are more localized, but also virtual. Squire, Joy, and I are all co-leaders of our respective user groups that if we're meeting in person and you're in town, join us. If the meeting is virtual, sign up, join us. It's global, it's virtual. So, but it's a great way to get connected with other local trailblazers, and know that you are not the only one doing this Salesforce thing. So getting into the potential content, we did have a couple of things get mentioned in the success group and through email. God, my mouse is way too sensitive. I'll start with Uzos because I think we did get an answer how to remove items from Service Console navigation menu. Let me pull that one up really quickly and we can show it. Yes, log in as me. I like it when I get to log in as me.
Do you know the best thing about my graduate being home this week? He picks up lunch for me.
Nice.
Like you've got an intern. It's just good for nutrition.
Yes, it's you fly, I'll buy. And he's like, I'm in. I'm like, okay, great.
So the question was, how do I remove an item from the Service Console navigation menu? If you've done it before, it's easy, but it's kind of hidden if you haven't. So I definitely appreciate the screenshot here that you have to actually go into the app manager in the Service Console and edit your navigation items. So glad that we were able to get that resolved pretty quickly and by a member of the community who was following the group. So
In 9 minutes.
in 9 minutes. Yeah, exactly. 9-minute response, 14-minute thank you, like done in half an hour.
Yeah, resolved in 30. That's amazing. I love it.
Exactly.
And that's why emailing us is a fool's errand. So put it in the group.
Right.
Put it in the group.
The other question that we had was a little bit more packed, I guess you could say, dealing with circumventing default batch sizes on scheduled flows. So we pasted the question in here. If we pop open the post, that trying to obviously run scheduled flows, default minimum batch size 200. As a result, all attempts scheduled flow have resulted in timeouts and errors. Preferred workaround solution proposal would be to create some type of button only visible on a sysadmin page layout. Okay, I mean, buttons are always great, but it requires someone to actually click it. Let's see. Secondary workaround solution is create a record triggered flow which fires upon the checkbox being checked. I actually attempted this by creating a new custom setting. So now we're starting to get into more programmatic, but included a checkbox in there. Unfortunately, it looks like record triggered flows aren't capable of using custom setting Boolean fields and entry criteria because custom settings aren't technically data, I don't think. I don't know. I'd rather avoid creating a new field on the object in question itself, but if I must, I'll consider it. So, and I saw Michelle join. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Didn't know if you saw this or not. Terry jumped in with a little bit of a response, but Michelle or anyone else who was able to digest the issue have any thoughts?
Yeah, Terry's pretty good at this, so I was just trying to read through his comments, and clearly I'm going to have to update my settings to try and figure out what email this notification went to because I wholeheartedly missed this.
Well, if it went to the wrong one, you can blame me.
Well,
Oh
and-
no.
And in your
got
defense,
7.
like you might not have comments to the posts going to your email.
Oh,
You
yeah.
may just have the initial post coming to your emails. So
Yeah, but I have like 7 emails. I just need to organize myself better.
I wish I could just have all Salesforce emails go to one place. They do not.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
I feel like as I was reading this, that this is one of those questions that really would have benefited from a conversation because I think and I can't remember the person's name who started it, but already had like some solutions in mind, which sometimes drives you off target. And so when Terry recommended jumping over to the Flow MVP office hours or whatever that one is, where does he reference it there?
Yeah.
Flow office hours. I think that was going to turn into a better conversation than people just throwing ideas. And I wasn't sure if they joined this call at all. So.
Yeah, he and Andy do a weekly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if Tyler's not on the call, because that's where we want to kind of drill in and see what the need is, like beyond what's on the surface, right, Squire? That's what you're.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I have proposals, are you just looking for confirmation that'll work, or do you want to tear apart the question? And so I was kind of hoping that someone would be able to speak to it in more detail. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you only read the top section, which is you've got some nightly or weekly processes on some records, and you want to address the batch size issues, I think the initial comment from Terry was being that if you'd use, is it record triggered flows that allows you to, manage the batch size? Like that's the first answer, but there's so much more to this question, I think, than just adjusting batch size, right?
Yeah, putting on my BA hat, I'm back to the what are you actually trying to accomplish and what are you doing? Like you're exporting and then running an update. Are you making changes in an Excel document? Like, I think we need to know more about what's being done and why they're doing this to be able to figure out what a reasonable solution would be.
Yep, I'm with you.
Well,
and even to the point of like,
also,
as soon as I hear someone hitting huge batch limits, my first question is, did anything actually change that would require to get all data? Like, can you just look for changes and manage 15 records versus 1500 records? Like, everything you're saying makes sense.
And I guess I would also question if we're using data loader like Apex data loader, where you can manipulate the batch size and this flow runs based on a change to the record, why is the data loader batch size not 1? What are we doing with that? But again, so many questions that we don't know the full context of this, but I don't want to lose sight of this because changing data loader batch sizes down to 5 or 1 or whatever definitely allowed me to do a lot of really amazing things with Process Builder. Haven't done it with record triggered flows, but Process Builder into a flow. If it's a 1, it's going to run. So.
Well, I don't know that it's that. It says, as a result, all attempts at the scheduled flow approach have resulted in timeouts. So basically, he's trying to not use data loader, and in trying to not use data loader.
Right.
I think that's where.
And not knowing the full scope of the problem being solved, is data loader something that can actually be removed? Because what if that is the only mechanism that allows you to manipulate the batch size?
So many questions.
Right.
Yeah. Tyler, come back to us.
Tyler, come back.
I was going to say my question with the flow would be, is he bulkifying it? Bringing up the record set and only doing 1 save on it, if he can do it that way. That was a revelation to me the day I figured that out.
Yeah, because I mean, you can put entry criteria in a scheduled flow and it will create an interview per record that meets it, and then it will automatically batch it for you. Or if you don't, you just run the scheduled flow and you're responsible for doing all the bulkification work within it, which may be another option to go down here. But again, I feel like we're all tossing things at a wall, hoping there's a dartboard on it somewhere, and maybe we're hitting it. Maybe we're not.
Mm-hmm.
What, you don't like to throw noodles at the wall, pasta, and see what sticks? Like,
Like, yeah, but that doesn't leave holes in the wall like darts do.
But we're not in the org, so it's okay. Like,
people, there are several
we're just mixing
practical ways to poke holes in the wall. Okay.
Why are we focusing on darts? Yeah.
I mean, I found some jarts in my parents' house the other day.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's amazing.
I'm like, oh, whoa, they actually still have these. That's
fatal.
Dangerous.
A fatal yard game. Terrifying. Whew.
I think I agree. We need Tyler to come back.
Yep.
Yeah, Tyler, come back to us. You guys ready to go to the next thing?
Sure.
Sure. What is it?
I don't know.
It's Joy's.
So before we jump into it, because I have a quick demo, I think, to help with the question. Did anybody bring anything to the meeting today other than just open minds and great attitudes?
Oh, wait, I was supposed to come with an open mind and a great attitude?
No,
I'm just
you
curious
just
if
go
you
and mute
did.
that, Michelle, if you didn't. It's fine.
This was an either or situation.
Yeah. Score me at 50.
I'm only being salty because, well, it's Friday. I'm so done with today.
Yeah.
It's not to
Why
you.
does the logic not work? Because we confused or and and. All right. If
So-
nobody else has something, then
This is this particular thing is I am trying very hard to look at a group of records, get that total number of the group of records, but then I need to know what the percentage of a specific stage of records that had a thing happen, right? It's like very convoluted. But the best way I think to like tease this out so that I can get the value into a dashboard is with the parent group val piece and a custom summary formula. And it's not something I've used well in the past, and I cannot for the life of me wrap my head around the formatting of
I'm with you.
of the formula in the thing. And I'm just like, what goes here? Like I get so far and then it's like, it needs another thing. And I'm like, I don't know what the thing needs to be. It's
Yep,
like trying to fill out a VLOOKUP without knowing that it's gotta be 1,0. Like,
I'm with you.
I'm like, what's the zero? What is it? What is it?
So I spun up a couple of really generic reports and then added columns. So let's just start there and then you can tell me what is missing and we can iterate on it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So let me just share my.
It really comes down to like understanding and translating where the
where the taco is.
he's right there. Taco, what is it? You've been outside. You played
Right.
basketball.
So let's start with, oops. Be my friend here. All right. So we're going to run this quick report just to make sure that we have the baseline. So this is just a list of all the opportunities sorted by their close date that are in a default Trailhead dev org. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So the first thing I did was I added a standard previous group val formula. And I think the hardest thing for anyone using these to remember is that even though it doesn't, the function is actually telling you exactly what it does. And then you have to be like, okay, well, if I understand what it does, then the formula itself fills itself in. But there's like this weird, like, what are you talking about, right? So I added a previous group val row. And when you think about previous group val, what you got to remember is that every grouping in your report has a parent. So if in the case of this one, I have one grouping, so my parent is the grand total. That's the only one that exists. So if you write a previous group val, which is, I think it's the easier one to understand. It just looks at the previous group based on the orders and you do your formulas, right? So if I jump in here now and I have to minimize a couple more things. And the reason I'm starting with this one, Joy, I know you were looking at parent, but I think the formula is easier to understand if you start with previous because it's not as convoluted. So I open this up.
I'm on board. Makes sense so far.
If I open this up, only focus on row 2 of the formula builder. So previous group val is a function. If I'm going to add it again just to add the syntax here. Previous group val. Okay. So the first thing it's asking you to do is which field that you're currently summarizing is critical, right? So in my case, because I was grouping by summing by amount, That's my summary field. That's the one that I'm doing my averages or my maxes or whatever. The grouping level is where you're saying, okay, well, you've got some levels of grouping in your report. Which one do you care about? And then the increment, I haven't found a really good use case for increment, but then it's great if you want to look in like blocks of 10 or something like that, and just show transition over the last 10 orders or the last 10 tasks or whatever. So if this is all true, the piece that tends to catch most people, in my opinion, is that there's another tab here. And so if you go to your display and you identify where you want this formula to actually calculate itself. So in this case, it's either a grand total, scissor groups, or all summary levels. So all summary levels sometimes doesn't work, but then once you pick a specific group, you pick which group you're going to display at. And so if you have more than one group in your report in either a matrix or in a tabular, you're going to be able to pick the one you want here. And once you've done that, you can then assign the group level. So I'm going to get rid of this. And in my case, the group level is close date, and that's just the field. And I can even go down here and show that's the grouping here at the bottom. So you don't even have to type it. You can just enter it. But once you get all that in, now you're basically saying in this formula, and again, we're only looking at row 2, give me the previous group val in this summary row. But that doesn't do anything because you've already got that value. So what are you going to do to it? In my case, I said, give me the sum within this group and apply it and compare it to the last group. So I'm going to close this really quick and rerun this and walk through how all that generated out. So it's a summary formula. So in this first row here, it's going to calculate the sales delta. So give me the sum of all the values subtracted from the previous value. But because there is no previous value, it nulls out because there's no previous value in this July row. And I jump down here. Now I've got the sum of the current values. So 3,300, 330,000 subtracted from the previous group val, 44,000, it gives me my negative. So very simplistic explanation, but once you start realizing like, okay, what we're talking about is effectively the gray rows and my groupings on the left-hand side, it starts to build on itself. So having said that, I'm going to jump over to this one now. So this, I think, Joy, is what you were talking about once it runs. Which you're saying, what is in this row, this July row, 440,000 is how much of the grand total, right? That's kind of what you're targeting.
Yes, I'm nodding my head.
Okay, so let's go into this formula really quick, and you'll see it's the exact same format with one caveat. So I'm going to jump in and open this one up, and you're going to see the same sort of thing. So I'm going to put a character in here. So parent group val has very similar formatting. You can't have a increment, but otherwise it works the same way. So you have what's my summary value and what's my grouping value. And if I jump back over here to display, you're still trying to say, where do you want to see this formula display? In this case, I want it to display at the close date row, close date grouping. But I'm comparing my formula of the sum of the values to the grand summary, sorry, the sum of the values to the amount sum in the grand summary row. So back out, run it again, and try to turn that gibberish into a sentence. So if I go back in here, so what I basically said at this formula is that at every close date grouping, what is the sum of the amounts, which is your subtotal row, and compare it to the grand total row, 3.6 mil, and what's my calculation? And in that formula, I said, give me the sum, compare it to the grand total, and give me a percentage. And I did standard division in the formula. It's just a standard formula, except for that one function. So I'm going to pause there for a second and try to find your shining face.
I'm
So
here.
far, so good.
Yes, I just have a needy Labradoodle.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to one more that's even more complex to kind of really cement this shut, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to jump in here. This report has 2 levels of grouping, if it ever runs.
Fancy.
Right? So I'm grouping by close date and then by stage. So before I even write a formula, I know that this qualification subtotal, its prior value is the prospecting one, right? But its parent can be either the close date row or the grand total. Those are both parent groupings above this level. Does that make sense? Okay. So if I jump back over here and I run my parent group val calculation report, you'll see that I have my 14%. So I'm going to open these in a second, but a percentage of year-to-date sales. So this 825,000 is 14% of this 5.7 million, because I'm saying, you'll see in the formula that I'm comparing this subtotal to the grand total. But I'm also able to do a calculation of this value, 440,000, is how much of this section's grand total, which is the month. So now I can say close one, 440,000 is 53% of the 825, because it knows it has a parent one above it, which is the date range. So stage to close date to grand total. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You're not?
Yes, it makes sense. I think
Okay.
my use case is a little bit more convoluted. That's
Yep.
that's where I'm. But
I'm not
this
surprised.
helps. No, this helps.
Okay.
It also helps me see how convoluted like what I'm trying to do is.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for this one, once you get past like what the relationship of parent and previous represents in the grouping, and you have to remind yourself that this is a summary formula row. So
Mhm.
you're not going to be able to do anything within the actual record itself. That's a record level formula. What you're doing is trying to do aggregation and comparisons. A lot of times that's what my team struggles with is, well, why can't I get, what's 15 compared to 100? Well, that's a previous grouping, but if you want to know the breakdowns within qualification, that's a totally different formula.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in here really quick.
I'm definitely trying to get the subtotal, the percentage of the subtotal from the total. Like that's the.
Yep.
That's
so you're
that's
trying to
what-
get, like in this picture, this 20% value to pop up to say,
Yep.
I have a subtotal, it's a percentage of a total. So let's go into these really quick. So, and you'll see I've got 3 columns here. So the monthly sales data is still the same formula from before. It's basically saying this at this level, what's the change in sales from the previous group val? So 825 to 455 is 370. And we've seen that formula already. It's the standard formula. So I'll just pop it open really quick. And there it is. It's the sum of the amounts in that grouping
Mhm.
minus the previous group vals sum. And we're talking about the close date previous group val. If you've got 5, you can't have 5. If you had 4 groupings, you could look up at any one of the other previous groupings and validate it. And my display, I'm still saying I want to see it on the close date group row. We can put that in more spots, and you can also have a group at the total or everywhere. Sometimes everywhere doesn't work because there aren't everywhere. There's no better way to say that. Like you'll look at it and you want, just show me everything, but if that's not really going to be applicable to the formula you wrote. So if you just think through it, it's usually pretty straightforward. So let's go to this next one. So percentage of year-to-date sales. This is column 2. Same thing as before, right? But because I have multiple columns, multiple groupings, when I open this one up, I'm comparing it to the grand summary. But I could have compared it to the another parent, in that case, the close date parent, and gotten a completely different percentage if that was something valuable. It probably wouldn't be for this report, but you can look at any parent above it. And same thing, I've got multiple groupings, but I wanted to show you here. See, I've got 2 different groupings. So I've got 2 different choices about where to show this value. In fact, I might even be able to do this just to. So see how it jumped from the stage grouping to the close date groupings? Sorry, vice versa, from the close date grouping to the stage groupings, just by making that one change. I'm telling it where to make the calculations. And if I go, this one might work for all, so we're just going to give it a shot. Yeah, see, it doesn't like this. You have to pick your grouping because of the type. So we'll do that, and we'll do stage. Come on. Oh, no, I broke it. The other way around. Cool. All right. So last formula then here. So it's percentage of the monthly pipeline. So this is that mid-range one. So I'm basically saying compare 440,000 to the 825,000 and give me a percentage. And so the way I did that was same thing. I'm checking the summary of the sum of the amount values in this grouping, get the parent group val, the sums, but now I've changed it to say the close date grouping, not the grand total grouping. So it's just going up 1 tier. My display is still at the stage level because that's where I want to see those calculations. But now I'm not looking at the grand total. I'm looking at the close date range. So I didn't write this because it gets really convoluted, but now in theory, we could do one more in here, and you could do a formula that basically says, so let's take this one again. So I know that 440,000 is 53% of the 825,000 row. I could have another column that says, okay, now tell me what 44 is of the grand total, because I just look at a different parent and I could have multiple breakdowns. So now if you have groupings by quarter and month and stage and sales rep and whatever, you can keep adding iterations of calculation comparing these subtotal groupings, and it just keeps going from there. All right, I think I've turned everyone's brains to mush, but I do want to see if there's clarifications or questions about anything that I just rambled on.
This helps immensely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it something that you want to talk through with your use case? I know you probably can't display it, but is it something you want to talk through, or do you just want to test out?
No, I'll have to like poke around and test it out some more. But essentially the use case is like there's a checkbox on the opportunity, like if something as specific has happened.
Yep.
And then if that's happened, right, it's a 1. And so we sum that out for all the opportunities. What we're trying to like tease out of this report is of the closed lost opportunities, what percentage have this box checked, right? And so I have my total number of opportunities, say it's 1,000, right?
Yep.
And the number of closed lost opportunities that have the box checked is 50, right?
Yep.
Like what's that percentage? Because that checkbox is an indicator of perceived success going forward. And the fact that it got closed lost after the checkbox happens, they're like, why did this not close when? Like those are the like, these are like kind of like a festering sore that they want to like dig into. And they're trying to identify like what this number is, how frequently it's happening, when it's happening, who it's happening to. And like the percentage needs to be displayed on a dashboard.
Yep.
And that's fine. But I almost think like, it's almost like maybe you just need a report of those things, not a percentage display, but it's important for them to understand the percentage that this is happening to,
Sure,
so that they can tighten it up a little bit more.
So what you described is something that I've dealt with. And one of the hardest parts about that one is you have to have that checkbox as a grouping in your report to use it in the report. So you end up with this kind of gibberish grouping column, which works, but it just makes the report look really ugly. So I think that once you build it, I think you'll have a really good example of, but see how this is ugly and not really functional? What you're looking for is this, and then you'll be able to steer them away from it.
I think you probably just like tripped over the exact thing that I needed to do, that I was getting distracted by all the other stuff, right? Is like grouping by that checkbox. And then
now I think you can probably, and someone else can jump in here now, you could probably do some sort of like power of one type calculation and pull it in as a non-column, but then you have to do some different type of summary calculations. You're not going to use previous or parent val. You're going to do something else entirely.
yeah,
Any thoughts there?
I'll see how this like shakes forward, and then you know, hopefully I'll just be able to tell you that it worked out.
Oh, well, that would be awesome.
After it's all said and done. But it was just one of those things where it's like, I feel like every time I've worked with the summary formulas, it's really straightforward. And all of a sudden I was like, this is not as straightforward as I want it to be, because like I can do sums, I can do averages, min, max, no problem. But wait, what? Oh, nuts. Parent group val, I need it. And I'm not comfortable with it, but I will be. Like after this, I will be. I'll be like, oh yeah, piece of cake. It's a tool in my toolbox. It's in the tool belt. We're all set now.
There was I was trying to find the link. By the way, there's a really good trail, maybe not for you, but in general, for these two functions, and the documentation in the admin guide is pretty good.
Actually, there's an excellent video
Oh,
that
good.
Jen and Sky put together, and I'll put it in the chat. Because I was watching it, and I think I was watching it without my full attention, which was also part of my problem. That's what happens when the dog starts losing his mind after like after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He's like, let's play, let's do all the things, and people are coming over and the doorbells are ringing anyway. But that video is actually a great it's a great explanation. I just couldn't apply my use case. Like I needed to talk through my use case with you, Squire. I needed.
I can't remember who did it, but there was an article at one point. It feels like it was one of those like Salesforce Bend type articles, because it was really short, sweet, and poignant. And it was basically like, think about previous group val and parent group val, not as formulas, but as like labels, or not like coordinates. So like if you think about that piece of function, say,
Yes.
I want to take the sum of these values and compare it to this number. That formula just says, look at my report and get a number off the page. And if you don't think about it as like a calculation, even though it is, and think about it more like, I have to write this to find the summary and the column, like, you know, like the XY coordinates basically, and pull it back into my formula, things tend to go a little bit more smoothly, but only if you understand how the parent relationship works with groups.
Right. I really feel like the display selector doesn't need to be a separate tab. I feel like it should be like above the general like formula. Like I don't feel like there's that much going on there. And I think like graying out when it's not available would have been huge, but that's like, it's not, I don't even know if that's worth putting into the idea exchange.
Well, at the bare minimum, it should have a square around it to call out that it's its own tab. It just kind of looks like part of the page, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just kind of floating there.
Yep.
But it's, you know, there's a lot of good functionality there that, you know, we had it before in Classic. It's not like it's that new. It just was different.
Yep.
Man. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for having some, you know, lull in our our content so we could talk about it. I love it.
And we didn't lose anybody. I didn't scare anybody away.
No, that's amazing.
You're gonna have to work harder if you want to be scary, Squire.
Oh yeah, I don't want to be scary. It just sometimes it ends up that way.
Oh my gosh. So Everyone's on quiet. Everyone's mute. Knock it off. Come off of mute. Since nobody has any other challenges, do we just need to stop recording and keep talking?
I mean, not recording would make my iMovie experience a lot easier. Yeah.
But I'm everyone has all their things solved for this week. This is amazing. Like no challenges that are gonna like rear their ugly head on Tuesday and be like, fix this thing.
Not relevant to this group. I mean,
Right.
I mean,
Those
we
are-
can
those are
solve other
different.
problems. We
you
can
know,
solve
those are
other problems.
different.
too. Yeah, but if we've got everything tied up in a neat little bow for today, like we can just.
Let me throw one out there just to see if there's any insight, if that's okay.
You bet.
We have a flow that uses a subflow. And because it uses a subflow, it has to be an after save, like standard flow, right? The problem is that we have a validation rule. So I'll pretend it's opportunity. So we have a validation rule on opportunity that says, if this is closed, you can't edit this. So what's happening is that because it's an after save flow, it's been set to closed, but it still needs to do the work that the flow and the subflow need to do, and then the validation rule triggers. Does that make sense? So is there a workaround for that that doesn't include tearing the subflow apart and putting it in the main flow?
Build in, this is a little convoluted, but this is what my brain first went to. Build in a checkbox, or I actually went with a pick list field that you set in a before save flow. And then check for that condition in your subflow to negate your validation rule. And then at the end, when you're done, reset that pick list field.
So, okay, so let me say it all back to you. So record is saved, or not, I should user saves the record. We got a before save flow that's a standalone flow that turns the checkbox on or off that the validation rule is tied to.
Right.
Then there in the after save flow, for it, when that one kicks off, it's in a state that makes it editable. And at the end of the after save flow, reset the and now I'm locked again checkbox.
Yes.
Interesting.
You may have to do the reset as an async. So it closes the transaction in a state where it's editable because the validation rule won't fire.
Right.
And then have a separate transaction for the reset that field, so that the
Okay.
validation rule would be respected later. But it's kind of cool because Rakesh did basically a thing on if you need to do validation rules, but you can't look up like child records,
Okay.
you can do basically a before save flow that does the looking at the child records to figure out if you want to prevent whatever, and then updates a field on the record in question to trigger a validation rule so your user can't save. So I'm trying to basically flip that on its head and say, if you have a validation rule that's going to fire and you don't want it to, use a before save flow to set a field that you can call in your validation rule to make it false so your validation rule won't fire.
Right. Okay. We were processing something similar in that, since this only happens on close, if we had a checkbox that say I'm locked, unlocked, whatever, that nobody even knows is there, but this flow says at the very end, by the way, if this was set to closed, also mark the checkbox as locked. In
Yes, but
theory,
you're gonna-
because that's after save, it's a secondary save, so it shouldn't throw the error the first time, is what we were thinking. Won't
Still
happen.
part of the same transaction though. You've got to break it apart. This is where with an after save, I would do like a scheduled path or an async. So you've closed that full transaction. And it's the whole thing is done in the unlocked state. And then the last thing that you do after that is you come right behind and you sweep up and you lock it.
Yep. Okay.
So, because unfortunately the problem is that in this case, you can't lock the door as you're walking through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we're on the side of, we're not really sure why. I don't want to say this. We're not certain why the flow should be running at all. If all you're doing is closing it, it should be ready to close. So we think that the issue is not the validation or the flow, but like a business logic issue. And we're kind of pushing back on that a little bit, but we're not really getting any traction. So I was trying to process other ways around that. I like where your head's at, Michelle. We'll throw that one on the page too.
The other thing would be, because I'm assuming the user is the one marking it as closed.
Yep.
I wonder if what you could do is, instead of having them update the field to closed, could you have them click a button or update some other field that would run the flow, and as part of that, have it mark as closed as part of the subflow at the very end. So hopefully that would also
We were trying
fix the
that, but
validation
it
rule
was a
issue.
weird situation because they're using path. And so the whole path is one way to do it, but then the last step is close and you'd have a different button to do it. Right. So that was what threw us off a little bit. We're also talking about doing something, not an actual approval, but more of a, I want this to be closed. Could someone close this for me? Because the only reason it needs to be locked is so that no one changes a couple of our expenses. But there's people who sign off on those expenses. So we're like, well, maybe what we should do is just say, nobody can close them. This auditing team closes. They have a custom permission that ignores the validation rule so that they can close it. And now everybody's back on track. But now there's a change in work. Anyway, I'm gonna see if we can do what you first described and see if that's impactful. So
Yeah, the other option we did is just, once you move it to closed, is this a standard or custom object?
it's a custom.
Once you moved it to closed, could you switch to dynamic forms and change those particular fields to conditionally visible as read only based on the stage being closed?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the entire object. From a compliance perspective, it needs to be, the whole thing needs to be locked down. So
Swap record types. It's icky, but
yeah, and we've got lots of those too. So it's a very complex object, 5 record types, multiple stage lists, lots of compliance gaps, and even mid-stage validations. So yeah, we're just trying to figure out, it's such a painful conversation because it's the last thing in the flow and it's causing the most headache. And we're like, oh crap. So anyway, I'll go from there. It looks like Tyler joined, and we were just lamenting that if Tyler could join us and fill us in on what he learned, that would be great.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
You can.
Awesome. So I'm actually on my phone right now, so unfortunately I'm not able to share my screen or anything. But I can tell you a little bit more about it. I also haven't done too much work on it past just kind of reading a little bit more about what that post was all about. But I am interested. Did the post kind of make sense what I was trying to circumvent?
I feel like the group was feeling like we wanted to ask you a lot more questions.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Is that what you're going to say? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's what I'm saying. If we bring the post back up, I'm sure the questions we had will pop back up.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, I'm trying to, there's a process in, so just some background actually. We're using a very old kind of managed package in our Salesforce org that is like basically legacy software. So we're bumping up against a lot of kind of limits and governor limits and kind of issues where we have to turn custom settings off and all of these triggers we'd have to turn off. So we're moving away from that and going into more of a NPS org, but we're still in this org for another, I don't know, 14 months or so. So we're trying to deal with building flows to rectify some of like the shortcomings of the managed package. So what we have is basically every time we create an opportunity, sometimes a date field won't populate correctly. And so what we do is we just run a Salesforce report. We'll catch all the dates that are incorrect we'll do an export, and then we'll obviously format the sheet, and we'll use data loader to update the dates. And that's fine, that works. We do have a lot of processes on the opportunity object, so it runs a little slow and it times out often. We definitely can't go above even, I would say, a batch size of like 10. And if we do that, then even the data loader will time out. They'll throw a bunch of errors. So I think in an ideal world, it would be, I mean, this is just like a little idea that I had. And I know I've posted about it, but it was more like, is there a place where I can put a button on an admin layout, and then there's about 5 or 6 admins on our team, and we'd be able to see it, and then every Monday, instead of running that data loader, we could create a flow that instead would just kind of do it, and it would format the dates, and it would do everything we want. And to be honest, I do have a flow all set up, and it does what I need it to do. But since it's a scheduled flow and we would like it to run every Monday, or honestly any day of the week, I know Salesforce has the limit of a batch size of 200 or more for a scheduled flow. And as I said, it can't be above 10. So that's kind of the thing I'm running into. And I was trying to look into maybe like a platform event, which I have no experience with, or I couldn't even talk about that, honestly. Or again, the kind of a scheduled path, which was in that response. And again, I don't have too much experience with it, so I kind of want to just pick your brains about it.
So can I try and summarize back what I'm hearing to make sure that I've got it?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So essentially what's happening is when an opportunity gets created, there's a date field that's wrong
Yes.
sometimes. And so on a daily basis, you want to be able to find this opportunity where this date field is wrong and fix it. And you have significant numbers of automation on your opportunity object. So modifying this one field is basically sucking up a lot of your processing power.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. And we don't have to necessarily correct the dates every day. It would just be maybe one day a week, or whenever, a designated day during the week, or a month even. But that is correct. We have a lot of processes on our opportunity object. We had so many that we actually hired a consulting firm to roll up a lot of our process builders into triggers and whatnot. But even so, we still have a lot of processes, even ones that we don't know, since all of it's managed code. Who knows if it's written the right way or whatnot? But even Salesforce actually bought the company that made the managed package, and I think they probably used it as maybe a basis for NPSP in the very beginning. So yeah, you're correct. It's a long way of saying you're correct.
So it's whatever is updating this one date field, like that needs to be corrected. It seems like whatever's populating that initial date field would save you all of the after cleanup. Yes.
It would, and I know for a fact that's the biggest issue, is that I know for a fact that particular date field is definitely a managed field, and so the process exactly. So the data loader works really well, and the flow works really well with kind of like all triggers disabled. And there has been thought of maybe we do a triggers disabled, and then we do a soft touch on all the records, and then it kind of does its thing. But I think maybe I was getting, I forget exactly, because I don't have it up in front of me what I wrote in the post, but my thinking was that maybe to get around the scheduled path situation, or just a scheduled flow, is that we could have a new checkbox on some object, which probably would be opportunity, even though I want to avoid that. A scheduled flow would obviously mark that checkbox as 1 or true once a week, and then the record triggered flow would trigger off of that scheduled flow based on the population of that kind of Boolean field. So I don't know if that's probably not the most efficient way to do it. But in my eyes, it would be so cool to have like a button that one of us can press. I think some of the admins in our org aren't as advanced as others. And it would be nice to have kind of like a one button situation.
Well, I'm wondering if, kind of to Joy's point, if we can nip the problem in the bud, it doesn't have to be fixed, and the fix is what's causing all your issues.
Right.
And the one thing that kind of jumped out to me is a semi-fix. Is there something about this field and how it gets populated that you could programmatically change it?
Like,
Because I'm wondering if a
like,
before
if
save
it's
flow.
wrong, like find out, like determine,
Yeah.
like it sounds to me like there's a way to identify that it's wrong. It's a very easy way to identify when they're wrong, but it still needs to be like identified that it's wrong. Because like you said the date's being populated upon creation, so it's not like these records are being created in bulk, like in batches. And so I'm just, you know how bad I want a workflow rule on this? Holy cow.
Well, honestly, a before save flow would basically catch the date is wrong and fix it before it ever even got created in the first place.
Yep.
Oh,
And
actually,
then you
I think
wouldn't have to deal with the rest.
yeah, actually, I think I'm understanding more of what you're talking about now. Yeah, so yeah, I thought you were kind of talking about being able to update the triggers that populate that date, but you're talking about just a before save flow so that we could just update the date. It's wrong, but before save, it updates it to the right date.
Yeah, like ideally the trigger would get fixed and so it didn't populate incorrectly to start
Right.
with. But barring that, if you can't actually force your user to put in data correctly, which we all know you usually can't, can we intercept it on the way into the database and go, dude, this just isn't right. Let me fix it for you now and save all of the headache down the line. So if there's a way that you can check when it's created, a before save flow runs before even before save triggers, if I remember correctly. So no matter what else the managed package is doing, you should be able to just squeeze right on in there and be like, yo, that's wrong, we're going to fix it, and then let everything else happen, and don't need to go back and fix this and then re-trigger whatever's happening on opportunity edit.
I was even going
Gotcha.
to ask one step prior to that and just why is, like, what makes the date wrong? Is it a UI change before there's even a save?
So the only reason I'm struggling explaining this is because next time we have this meeting, next time we have office hours, I kind of want to show you what I'm talking about.
That'd be great.
I can't even tell you how complicated they made this in the creation of this managed package. It's basically pulling from another record. So opportunities create, and just as some other background, we have it's kind of managing some public media orgs and or data, and so we need kind of like donation windows. So in order to know when like a renewal period is or a lapse period is, they need to create a separate object called summaries. And so every time an opportunity is created, it creates summaries that basically have membership windows. And once the date, there's a date field on that summary object that the date field that I'm talking about on opportunity is referencing. And if it's before that date, then it's incorrect. It needs to be after that date. So that seems relatively simple, I guess, if you do a get, I guess.
Right,
and
like
then
you can't choose a date in the past, essentially, like compared to this other one, right?
Right. Yeah.
It feels like there's quite a few answers, and I think it would be really valuable for you to show us so that we could all pile on. Our next call is going to be on the 10th. Normally it's the 1st and 3rd, but next month is going to be 2nd and 4th because it's a long month.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that'd be perfect. And just while I have you, just a quick question. Oh, actually, I know we're over. Sorry, I could also
It's
read
okay.
next time.
Yeah, I mean,
We're all still here.
The last,
We all got early dismissal
Okay,
for
good.
holiday weekend.
oh, nice. Congrats. Just real quick, a process question, kind of how it works. For save flow makes sense to me. But since considering how many processes I have on opportunity, would it add to the strain? I'm just wondering if like a scheduled flow where I schedule it, or sorry, not schedule it, but like you can kind of trigger it after hours.
Just the short version is it doesn't matter when you run it. It matters how many things are running at the same time at that moment. And if your flow is causing an update, it's going to cause all the updates. I mean, if your resources are constrained because of like 300 people doing the same updates as your manual update, sure, but it doesn't sound like that's what's happening.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
So were you going to say something?
I think the argument is this is one more step in what's already a create process, but we're fixing a field, and that's pretty low lift in terms of processing power. It's why before save flow is actually the best way to go. They're 10 times faster than after save or process builder or whatever like that. And that small incremental lift on an individual field create should be negligible as opposed to what you're running into, which is the sheer volume of activity that's happening on an opportunity create or opportunity edit times the fact that you're trying to do this in bulk is where you're running into the issue. So
Right.
I think it's definitely, if you can fix it in the create process versus having to do an edit, that takes care of most of your issue. And I don't think it would be such a big lift that all of a sudden your create is going to blow up because we're trying to fix this one little field.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So next time I'll bring my flow that has already been created that essentially does what I would like it to do, and maybe we can. I'll get your help.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tyler.
All right,
Well,
everybody.
thanks for
Totally
tagging
make-
along and being our expert. We appreciate you.
Oh, I will totally make sure I'm here. I've been wanting to join this for a while, and
And thank you for not letting me like go down the road of workflows. I'm gonna miss them. They're just so easy. They're so easy, but not powerful at all. It's like having a spoon when what you need is like a toolbox of stuff, so
I'll just bring the jarts, Joy. It's fine.
it's oh my God. I have vivid memories of jarts happening at family picnics. It's like that plastic circle, which was like a mini hula hoop, and I was always a kid who stole it to play with it, which was really dangerous because